Hello my dear students. Welcome to the second session of active and passive voice. Let us have a quick recap of what we did in our previous video. Simple present tense. He receives a letter. The passive will be a letter is received by him. Present continuous. He is receiving a letter. A letter is being received by him. Simple past. He received a letter. A letter was received by him. Past continuous. He was receiving a letter. A letter was being received by him. Present perfect. He has received a letter. A letter has been received by him. Past perfect. He had received a letter. A letter had been received by him. Present perfect continuous tense and past perfect continuous tense do not have the passive form. Our next tense is now future tense. In future tense, the first is simple future. The rule to change into passive voice is will or shall plus be plus third form of the verb. For example, we shall or will pardon her. The passive will be she will be pardoned by us. Next is future continuous tense, which doesn't have any passive voice. Future perfect tense. The rule is will or shall plus have been plus third form of the verb. For example, he will have done the work. The passive is the work will have been done by him. There is no passive voice for future perfect continuous tense. In sentences with the modal verbs, for example, can, may, must, should, would, could, might, ought, the word be along with the past participle of the verb is added. For example, you must do your homework. Your homework must be done by you. In changing imperative sentences, we use the verb let followed by the passive infinitive without to. In case of requests, when the sentence begins with kindly or please, you are requested is used followed by the infinitive. In the imperative sentences, the agent by is not used in the passive voice, but the sense of the object is hidden in the sentence itself. For example, post this letter. Let this letter be posted. Sit down. You are ordered to sit down. Work hard. You are advised to work hard. Bring the keys to the room. The keys should be brought to the room. Some verbs take prepositions after them while changing the voice. The preposition should be retained. For example, the crowd laughed at the clown. The clown was laughed at by the crowd. My aunt looks after me. I am looked after by my aunt. Sometimes prepositions other than by are used in the passive voice. For example, I know her. She is known to me. Sometimes the change of verb takes place only in the infinitive. For example, it is time to offer prayers. It is time for prayers to be offered. Few more examples are: someone has picked my pocket. My pocket has been picked. Now here we do not use someone because it is understood. Next is roses smell sweet. Roses are sweet when smelt. Interrogative sentences. When the active sentence begins with auxiliary verbs like do, did and does, the passive sentence will begin with are, was and were. For example, did Kavita make this chocolate cake? Was this chocolate cake made by Kavita? Next is, when the active sentence begins with auxiliary verbs like have, has and had, the passive sentence will begin with have, has, had been plus past participle of the verb. For example, have you closed the door? Has the door been closed by you? Next is, when the active sentence begins with a question word such as what, when, why, where and how, the passive sentence will also begin with a question word and the preposition usually by is added. For example, which room did they paint? Room was painted by them. When the active sentence begins with who or whose, the passive sentence will begin with by whom or by whose. For example, who taught you French? The passive can be by whom were you taught French or by whom was French taught to you. Next is, when the active sentence begins with whom, the passive sentence will begin with who. For example, whom are you waiting for? Who is being waited for by you? Dear students, here is the practice exercise for you. You can pause my video and you can solve this practice exercise. The answers of this practice exercise is given on the next slide. Here is the solution for the practice exercise given. You can check your answers.
Dear students, here is a worksheet for you. You will do this given worksheet in your English language notebook. Students, you need to do page number 53, 64, 65 and 69 in total English. We will discuss these exercises in our next interactive session.
Thank you, my dear students. Stay safe, stay healthy and keep practicing.